Do you struggle to focus on things that you need to? Like, squirrel, like who am I? What was I talking about? Well, this could be your answer, where this nootropic inhibits dopamine reuptake. It is a dopamine releasing agent. It's found naturally in the world from the Amazon originally. Like, who is this nootropic? Well, this is Catuaba bark. And this really piqued my interest years ago, as I made a video that went viral for my channel that got 300,000 views, titled the 7 strongest Adderall alternatives. And I think a big takeaway that a lot of people had was the effect that Catuaba bark had with D-L-phenylalanine, and how it mimicked a lot of Adderall's dopaminergic effects, its functional effects. And so me looking at all this research, making that video, I was so excited about it. But the biggest issue at the time is that there was no good source of it, where it was hard to standardize. There's not really very thorough process built out in the Amazons for identifying, standardizing, packaging herbs, unfortunately. But that seems to be solved, the company in before by Lucas Owen. And so I decided to try out his Catuaba bark, and I was just really curious to see how it would affect me. I didn't really know what to expect. Like, on one hand, I knew it was dopaminergic, but that could mean like a lot of different things, as there's some people that drink like 2-3 cups of coffee and just feel super tired. So a lot of times, like, you know, there is the theory, there is the idea of it, but ultimately experimentation, activity in the field is king. And so I tried it out like quite a few times, and what I really noticed from it was just a really good pick-me-up, where you go about your day. You know, I think a lot of people hit like the 2 p.m. slump after they eat lunch and they're still working for the next few hours afterwards, just before they go home. They kind of feel a little bit tired, lethargic, malaise. And I noticed with taking Catuaba that I just had a little bit more energy. It was a little bit more of a power up. I just felt a little bit more social. I had a little bit more mental clarity as well. It was easier to get started with the things that I had to do. If there was a task that I was procrastinating on, once I took Catuaba, it was just easier to kind of follow through with that. Like, the barrier was a little bit dissolved and I could just go through easier. I really like the pro-social aspect of it, where you definitely feel like a little bit more social and talkative, as there's a few compounds that kind of hit on the dopamine system that are stimulants at their core, but they can also make you a little bit like asocial, where I think a lot of people know someone that's tried Adderall and they go from a very social person to a very withdrawn asocial person that just focuses on work. This isn't like that, where I noticed I was still had good sociability, which is obviously very important. It also increased libido, where libido is Latin for desire. And that's really what that does, where it increases your like chi energy to pursue things outside of yourself. And libido is commonly described just for like sexual activity, but ultimately libido is applicable to other areas of life, right? Desire, pursuing things outside of yourself, it's very good in that way. And so this definitely ramps up libido, and even it's used in supplemental formulations in Brazil with around 3 other herbs to function as a libido increaser and an aphrodisiac. And it's used tribally to that, as there's been lots of tribes in the Amazon that has used this for centuries and centuries to get it up when everything else goes down. Honestly, it's a really, really cool product. I think the Amazon is such a hotbed for medicinal research that we're just gonna find out more about in the next few decades, as it is just so many new interesting discoveries to be made there. And this also has very powerful anti-fatigue effects, and it's even been studied as a drug in that context. And I noticed that too, where there's a few times where I originally started trying it and I noticed that I just took it before bed because it was like stupid, but I did that and it like kept me up the entire night. So it definitely has that effect. So definitely good to take in the morning, I found. Dopamine essentially is the name of the game. It is the molecule of more. It is the happiness of pursuit, where you climb to the mountaintop and then you just want to climb to the next one, where it's all about taking action, pursuing things outside of yourself. And this is definitely what it increases. And due to this increase in dopamine, it has multiple effects in that it is anti-nociceptive. So essentially it can decrease pain perception by increasing dopamine activity, as well as it is antibacterial, antifungal. And you'll find something very interesting with a lot of compounds, medication, supplements that increase dopamine activity, in that they're also antimicrobial, also antifungal. And it's thought one of the main reasons is that something that increases dopamine also increases oxidative stress, and microbes are very sensitive to oxidative stress, so it can help break them down, as well as it's thought to have that antidepressant effect just due to this increasing dopamine. And I have a little thought about happiness and sadness and all of that, where oftentimes it's said that the opposite of happiness is sadness, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I think the opposite of happiness is boredom, where happiness is the happiness of pursuit, you know, it's action, boredom is inaction. So if you and feeling a little bit low, but you can take things that kind of put you in that motivated energy state. It can boost your mood, and I think it's responsible for happiness, because a lot of people, you know, once they build like multi-million-dollar businesses, whatever it may be, once they reach that mountaintop, it's kind of like, but it's the happiness of pursuit to reaching it. You know, I think that's more so what it relates to. It also can improve cognition through a few different mechanisms. Firstly, it is this acetylcholinesterase inhibitor, which is a target of a lot of pharmaceutical medications for neurodegenerative conditions. Obviously, this is very weak compared to those. It has the same strength for that as berberine, which is not that strong whatsoever, but it is a common pathway, as acetylcholine is very much the neurotransmitter of memory, of focus, of fine motor movements, digestion to some capacity. It can also help protect the hippocampus from toxins, as well as induce neurogenesis within that brain region, which is very important, as it is kind of the librarian of the brain, where it can collect memories and store them for retrieval at a later date. Part of the protective effects of running for neurodegeneration is the fact that it can induce hippocampal neurogenesis, as it is very important for brain health short-term and long-term. It's also a fairly potent antioxidant, as oxidative stress is inversely correlated with cognitive performance to a degree. So if you can lower this through antioxidants, you can improve your thinking ability, your mental clarity. For this supplement, I mainly took 2 capsules, 1 to 2. I find anything more than that, I just started to get a little bit more agitated, or a little bit more short-tempered or so, and that's commonly what you see with things that increase norepinephrine, which this definitely does. Where hangry, you know, that short-tempered because you haven't ate, is just due to a spike of noradrenic activity, norepinephrine. So I definitely noticed that effect, so I kind of stayed within there. Took it in the morning, always on an empty stomach, and I always noticed a good uptick in my cognitive faculties. So Lucas Owen, he made this product after looking for Catuaba for around like a year in Amazon, looking for a verified source. Eventually he found it, but then there was another hurdle where it had to pass the HPTLC assessment, which is always kind of tricky. And then it passed it with flying colors. So this is legitimate Catuaba bark. So if that's something you wanted to try for its dopamine effects, or kind of interested you like it did to me, definitely a good option to check out. And if you want to know about the best dopamine upregulator that not many people know about, you know, check out my video where I did with Canna, how it upregulated my dopamine and how that isn't always a good thing.